Hi friends, Mindy here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have an unusual sort of video for you today. I am going to be creating a journal to work through Camp Acts from Illustrated Faith. At least that was my intention going into this, which is the unusual part, is that I will not actually be using it in the way that I intended, and I will get to the explanation of that in just a little bit. But first, I kind of want to walk you through my process for creating the cover for this journal, because a lot of times when I use vintage books or, chipboard that's already assembled, it has a spine piece. And so this day is just a little bit different in that I had to create my own spine. I only had the cover pieces for this book. And so what I ended up doing is taking some chipboard that I have that was thicker but not quite thick enough, so I cut it down to size and I doubled it up. So there's two layers. I glued those together with some double-sided adhesive, some really sticky adhesive, and now I have these laid out on my mat here, and I'm going to use some gaffer tape. Now gaffer tape is actually for like electronics, but it's similar to a bookbinder's tape in that it's like a cloth fabric tape. So it's really, really strong and really flexible. And so, but you can see here, I'm trying to close this book, and I realized that I did not leave enough space between the book cover and the spine piece. And so a general rule of thumb there is that you want that gap to be about the same width as your chipboard, right? And I thought I had done that, and I don't know if I moved the pieces or what I did there, but I just did not have enough space. So fortunately, I was able to actually pull these up. I was really, really surprised. I just kind of had to work really slowly. I was able to reposition those. And then I just brought that gaffer tape to the inside, and I had to cut it down a little bit. And then this will all be covered. So I tried to line it up, as neatly as I could, but it's not perfect, but that's okay, because again, I'm going to be covering this in some fabric anyway. So you can see here, I'm just going over this with my bone folder, going down in the little kind of gutter sections of that, and those gaps, just to make sure everything is adhered down really well. And then I'm going to come in with some fabric that I have that I feel like matches the cover really well. I was sorry to kind of lose some of that trim on there because it was had a little bit of gold foiling in it. But I needed to be able to cover all of that up. So I'm just using some fabric now. There's a couple different ways that you could do this. If you're going to use like Fabri-Tac or even Beacon 3-in-1 or something like that, those are kind of solvent-based glues. Just to be sure that when you're kind of putting this out, that you do a full layer of glue and you kind of smooth it out, and so it's nice and thin layers, because you don't want it to seep through. Fabri-Tac, especially with the fabric that I'm using, could seep through very easily, and it can kind of stain your fabrics. It can do kind of crazy things to it. And if you don't have a nice even coverage, especially for a cover, you'll get like air bubbles and stuff. And so that's definitely not what you want on a cover piece. So what I decided to use was cocoina glue, which is a paste. And I have this. I've used this for covering like mini pocket Bibles and those kinds of things with fabric, and it works really well. I've never had any problems with it, and so you get really good coverage with it this way. And so I just made sure to apply a generous amount of that, and made sure even to get down in the little grooves and everything, I'm just using a glue stick. There's also a little version that comes in like a tin that has a brush. You can just literally brush it on. I think the glue sticks are really convenient, so I have those. But and then you can see it just sticks right down. I need to trim this down just so I want to make the inside of this look as neat as possible, because I'm not going to be adding any end papers or anything on the inside. I really just wanted it to look as authentic to the cover that I'm using as possible. And I like the raw edges of the fabric, and I like how all of that looks. So for me personally, I just didn't need to add anything like end papers or whatever. You could certainly do that and cover up those rough edges on the inside, but I actually really like how this looked together. And my intention is to do a twine binding technique here. So again, when I started out creating this journal, my intention was to work through the camp for ACT for the summer, for June and July. And so I knew that the devotionals were broken down into 3 sessions in each devotional. So I decided that I would do like 6 folios and then add all of my notes and things kind of into each folio, because the way that this journal works, because it's going to be with the twine binding, you can add things in, take things out. It just creates a really versatile journal to work with. And so that was my intention. So I cut some paper down to fit my covers, which this ends up being like 10 inches by, I want to say 7, I think, inches tall. And I used my scoreboard to just score this so I would get a really nice, good fold. I'm using Bristol vellum paper here. It says really heavyweight mixed media paper. And I like to do that because I know that it's just going to be able to stand up to whatever, I put in there. And so I scored those, folded them all, and now I'm going to do the twine binding. If you've watched my channel before, you have seen me do this multiple times. I have other videos where I've done this. Like I said, I like this binding because of it being so versatile. And so my intention, like I said, when doing this was I knew that these devotionals were broken down into sessions. And as I was going through looking at the devotional, like I always do before I start working through it, I came to a day, and I'm not going to read the title of it because I don't want that information on my channel, to be honest with you. But I will tell you that it is day 4 of session 2. And when I got to it, it really grabbed my attention, and honestly, it grieved my heart. And I just kept thinking about it all day. I really, really struggled with it, honestly. I had several talks with my husband about it. In full transparency, it bothered me to the point that I actually reached out to Shauna. I sent her an email. We had a lovely conversation. So I am not trying to throw shade on anybody or anything. I just am just sharing where I'm at, because I previously posted a video where I did an unboxing of this kit, and I shared how excited I was about it with everybody. And so in full transparency, I feel like you need to understand. I feel like I need to share why I have chosen to kind of step back from sharing content for this devotional. And so if you own this devotional, when you get to day 4 of session 2, you'll see, and you may get there and it may not bother you one bit, and that is totally fine. And I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm not trying to do anything. I in my email with Shauna, I shared scripture why I felt like this day was, just inappropriate and not biblically sound, to be really honest. And that's just my own conviction. So I'm not judging anybody. I think we all have to just follow our own convictions, and I hope that you can understand that that's what I'm doing here. I just wanted to offer the explanation for why you really just are not going to see me working through this devotional on my channel. And so you can see I started decorating the first folio for session 1 here. And the good thing about this journal is that if I decide to not do that, I can just pull it out and replace it with another piece of vellum vellum smooth paper. And I can use this journal for something else, which at this moment is kind of my intention, because I created it. So I do want to use it for something else. But I just felt an obligation to share the truth of what I'm feeling with this, because again, this is personal conviction. This is Mindy being personally convicted that this day is just not something that I can share, and I don't want to seem like I'm supportive of this kind of information being put into a Christian devotional. And so like I said, I did reach out to Shauna, so I'm not trying to just slander or anything like that. I hope that you can feel my heart. If it doesn't bother you, then continue on. And I hope that this devotional will lead people to get into their Bibles and read their Bibles for themselves and see what the Spirit has for them in this study, and really seek out from the Lord what He wants to show you, as we should always be doing whenever we're encountering any kind of literature or anything really. It should get us deeper into our Bible. That's always my intent. That's always the direction that I want to guide people, is back to the source, back to the Bible, back to, biblical teaching and sound truth and those kinds of things. And so, but I just, like I said, felt an obligation to kind of share because I shared my excitement, and this is just the reality. I got into this devotional. I got to a page, and there are things that, you know, just I'm personally convicted that I can't, I just won't be sharing on my channel, because that feels like I'm now promoting that, and I don't want to do that in any way. So you can see I'm just sliding that back in. That's kind of how this twine binding works. It's why I love it, because it's really simple. You can add things in, take things out. And I really felt like this journal turned out cute. And I, you know, I like all of the washies and all those kinds of things. And so you'll probably see me using those. It's just, I won't be sharing the devotional content for this particular devotional at this time. So I did add one of the vinyl stickers to the front of this devotional that says seek first the kingdom, because I really love that sticker. And so this is just kind of what the inside of the journal looks like. So please be patient with me. Please be kind in the comments. If you don't feel particularly convicted in this way, I totally understand, but let's at least be respectful of the conversation. So anyway, if you liked this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, bye.